Okay, it's a very warm welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to call it the very good morning, noon, afternoon, evening. And for some of us, I know it's maybe a midnight. This is a group, HC Impact Group, a global expert network, which is presenting this webinar. And one of the things that I would like to say about this group is that this is the group on which sun never sets. We have a very, I think, a good galaxy of speakers today, and the topic is also very important. We all hear about the sustainability, ESG, and the topic is the how to disclose human capital in the ESG reporting by using ISO 30414 guidelines for internal and external human capital reporting standards. Most of the members of this group are the, I think, called the co-authors of the standard. And this webinar is also going as a live streaming on the YouTube channel of one of our members. And we are going to have the different threads about this conversation today. And this includes a brief introduction about this special group and how this mission that we are chasing is a link with the overall mission of the planet, that is sustainability. And then the almost 15 different members, they're going to talk about the different threads, including the components of the disclosure. How does it really impact the organization? How it can impact the different stakeholders? What are the different important modalities in terms of the difference or the terminologies that those are being used in the standards? And most importantly, what's the purpose? Why we are doing it? And what difference it's going to make to the organizations? And the experts are going to share their experience with also a focus on the relevant market. What is happening in the different parts of the world? What organization have got certified on the standard? And toward the end, we are going to have some, spotlight on what's coming ahead, because the members of this group are also part of the ISO technical committee on the TC 260. So in that context, I think it's important to keep a tab on the different things which are currently in the process of evolution. So without taking more time, I would like to request Hilger Pothman, who is basically a driver behind the entire process, and he is managing this group, Human Capital Impact Global Expert Network Group, and I also I'm supporting him in this webinar. Hilger began his professional career in 1985 at the Deutsche Bank and Germany. Between the 2008 and 2024, he was responsible as a regional head of HR and business partner, covering a large part of the German region of the Deutsche Bank group. Currently, he is leading their transformation enablement group in Germany. Besides being a founding member of the Goinger Press in 2004, Hilger has been a voting member of the Society for Human Resource Management in 2010-11, supporting the development of the US HR standard. In this context, he is also an initiator and founding member of the German DIN Mirror Committee of ISO TC 260, which is responsible for developing the global HR standards with a specific focus on orchestrating guidelines for the human capital reporting, which result into ISO 30414 as a product. Hilger continues to be a passionate advocate and a driver toward the implementing ISO 30414 and establishing a benchmark around the human capital intangible for all the stakeholders. And Hilger also has the honor of belonging to a company which happens to be a second ISO 30414 certified company on this planet, the Deutsche Bank. So Hilger is going to talk about the overall mission, what is the overall driver for this group, and the composition of the group. So Hilger, over to you, and I can stop sharing my slides, or if you want me, I can just give me next, and I'll move on the slides, whatever you prefer.
Thank you, Sahid. Maybe you can show the expert world map so people can see how large the distribution of the group is. Maybe that would be helpful. Wonderful. So first of all, thank you, Sahid, for organizing this impressive event and for your nice words. You shouldn't have read that. It makes me, red in my face. I'm personally very proud that we see so many highly valued, true human capital experts on this call as speakers, and I must emphasize, I've seen a few names also as participants. Human capital impact. Well, nomen est omen, as the French say, or other languages. We are simply a group of 25 experts as of today, and we share one single mission. Human capital is considered equally relevant as financial capital. We need to get this in the heads of all CEOs, of all politicians, of all talents, and of all regulators. That's our mission. Human capital is considered equally relevant as financial capital. Now, think about the reality where we all come from and think what will change in the next years and decades with human work in the human capital marketplace. So for investors, for talent, and for governments, that is relevant, and certainly for us as human capital professionals. Some of us have been working on this mission for decades. We are in frequent or infrequent conversations and exchanges with Dr. Jack Fitzenz, Dave Ulrich, and other very, very senior HR experts. And they're very proud that this group, but specifically that ISO has ultimately produced and coordinated this standard called 30414. As a group, we started to meet and grow after the completion and the delivery of ISO 30414, and that was back in 2019. Beginning of 2019, we came together. Many of us, we met during those years of the standardization work at ISO and in all of these different country-level mirror committees. And others joined our group over the past 5 years. And the latest one, Dr. Christine Vollertun, she joined from a large insurance company yesterday. So the number 25 was completed yesterday. So this is a wealth of knowledge and experience. I don't know if we were to count the years of experience in the field of human capital markets of alone these 25 experts, plus the ones that are participating today, it would be an impressive number of years that are sitting all together on this live stream and in this meeting. So back to you, Sahid. Thanks for the opportunity and getting this whole thing organized.
Super. Thanks for the wonderful start, Helga. And with this, we move to our next speaker. In fact, ladies and gentlemen, we have kept a very small, amount of the volume of the, talk for every speaker, just to make sure that it's not an overload for any of the audience, because we have almost 15 speakers and like 5 to 7 minutes on an average, everyone is going to talk. And but definitely would like to cover the different aspects of this 30414, which are essentially important to, to comprehend and also to implement the standards. So our next speaker is Jeff Higgins, a leading expert with 30 years experience in the people analytics and workforce planning, and original architect of the ISO 30414, advisor to institutional investors and an adjunct professor at HR and people analytics at University of Southern California. A former CFO and CHRO, Jeff and his HCMI team are trusted by clients around the world for the smarter, data-driven decisions that quantify workforce ROI. So he's a professor of the Analytics University of the Southern California, Marshall School of Business, co-founder, Human Capital Investment and Reporting Council, member of the ISO TC 260 since 2011, architect of ISO 30414, advisor to the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission on the Human Capital Standards in the United States, and 100% ISO 30414 compliant human capital software by the name of the Sol that he presents to the market. So over to you, Jeff.
Yeah, Thank you so much, Zaid. It is an honor and a pleasure to be here with so many people that I've known for so many years. And all of us are passionate about human capital around ESG, measurement, reporting, and perhaps most importantly, disclosure. Bad things happen in a dark room, and it's really long overdue for organizations to disclose more information about their most critical asset, human capital, people. So what are the drivers behind all of this? Well, Hilger, my esteemed colleague Hilger, touched on this a little bit with the increasing emergence and importance of ESG, or environmental, social, and governance areas and issues. Environmental issues have really grown in importance and are increasingly well measured, reported, and disclosed. But social and governance aspects, in particular, human capital, is still lagging behind in much of the world. And that was one of the drivers of the original creation of the ISO standard 30414. So a lot of these, I'm just going to touch on some of these bullet points very quickly. Again, the idea is just to speak for a few minutes, and then I'm going to hand it over to another of my esteemed colleagues, Solange Shiraz. So human capital is increasingly being recognized as one of the most important drivers of competitiveness, value creation, sustainable competitive advantage in a highly volatile environment where technology, environment itself is changing rapidly. So HR and human capital is pivotal to every organization's success. In fact, it again is probably the most valuable asset. And yet that seems in contradiction with the fact that much of the most important information about talent, people, human capital, if you will, is not disclosed. So beyond traditional metrics, crucial intangible aspects around, for example, employee engagement, culture, leadership effectiveness, leadership trust, measuring these elements in addition to things like your cost of your workforce, how many people you have, how much training you invest, and many other aspects, including diversity, health and safety, compliance, are all critical and offer tremendous value to investors who increasingly recognize and actually include that value in some of their investment decisions. So companies are under pressure, increasing pressure from investors, government agencies, regulators, customers, employees, communities, to be more transparent. And to be fair, many organizations are voluntarily disclosing more information. One way they can do that is by complying with the ISO 30414 standard, or even they can get certified on ISO 30414, which is a great way from both an offensive and defensive perspective to show their compliance, show their transparency, and minimize risk for their organization, because they're able to point at this global standard, which is the ISO 30414, as the set of metrics and standard they are using as their guiding light. So you can see a lot of the reasons why organizations, may want to comply with standards. So from an overall perspective and then a company perspective, you can see it's a great way to minimize risk, improve operating efficiency, support market expansion, environmental impact, and meet your own ESG goals, and also to improve business insights and better business outcomes. So let's go to the next page. Thank you. So from a time perspective, I could probably talk for an hour on this, but we're going to make it just 1 to 2 minutes here. This is an updated version of a slide that was originally created and cited by the conference board in some research that actually a couple of other members who are speaking, including Solange Shiraz, helped put together in some research. Now, I've updated it by adding a new organization to it. But you can essentially see that. Actually, that's the old version. So apologies. The new version will be included. A new version actually includes the new CSRD, EFRS S1 which was approved in the EU, European Union, for human capital reporting disclosure, and many European countries are actually scrambling to comply with that beginning in 2025, 2024 and 2025, with additional phased-in requirements being included. If you look at this and you just look at the colors, you can see that the quantitative versus qualitative versus both quantitative and qualitative kind of really show that from the third column, which is ISO, really reflects ISO 30414, which is in fact the most quantitative of the other standards. With, simply said, it's the most blue of all of the different standard setting bodies and frameworks out there. There are many other good frameworks that are being used. Most of them are heavily required, or heavily focusing on compliance from a qualitative and discussion standpoint, as opposed to a pure quantitative standpoint. So it still leaves organizations and companies that want to follow these other networks and other standard setting body formats to the ability to talk about it, but not show anything specific. In other words, they could say they love their people and treat them well and everyone's highly engaged, but they don't have to report their employee engagement score. So that's the idea, the point, the value of disclosure and measurement is what gets measured gets managed, and what gets disclosed, in all likelihood, is going to get more focus and improvement. With that, I'd like to turn it over to my next colleague, Solange Shiras.
Super. Thanks, Jeff, for giving us a wider perspective in terms of coverage of the important aspects of the disclosure by the different standards and the standard setting body. Okay, so our next speaker is Dr. Shiras. She's the founder and the CEO of the HC Moneyball and a professor of practice at Columbia University. Dr. Shiras' work is focused on identifying and quantifying the material impact of the human capital on the corporate performance, generating thought leadership for the board directors and the C-suite executive. She's an expert in the area of the human capital disclosure required by the ESG governance framework. As a member of the ISO TC 260, she contributes to the development of the global human capital standards. Solange is a board director at the Conference Board, Word at Work, University of Southern California, and EZRA Coaching. She's a co-author of the Humanizing Human Capital, Invest in Your People for Optimizing Business Returns. I have read this book, a wonderful compilation, and is currently writing her second book. This one focused on the human capital management in the professional services firm. I also must inform everyone that we are also going to have the round of question answers, but toward the end. So all those speakers who are with us at that time, they'll be happy to respond to any of the questions that the audience may have. So over to you, Dr. Solange.
Thank you, Zahid. I am delighted to be here with all of you and be in such good company. For the people who are participating, who are observers, this group of speakers, and there are some experts in our team that are unfortunately not participating, but we are really comprising what they say, the tip of the spear when it comes to human capital information, human capital compliance, human capital disclosures, and human capital standards. So my question today that I'm going to be addressing is, what is the S of ESG, the S being the social, and how do we connect what's going on in terms of human capital in an organization and how that supports sustainable financial outcomes for organizations? Next slide, please. And I'm going to go through these slides pretty quickly. Obviously, we're not the only ones that are thinking about S as an issue. I gave, hopefully Zahid will share these slides with the participants, but there's a hot link to an article called Time to Rethink the S in ESG, which is published in the Harvard Law School Forum on Corporate Governance. And you can see that the S is not just about employees, but it's about customers, quality issues, data security, supply chain management, your relationship with your suppliers and your strategic partners. So the S really covers a lot. But today we're just going to focus on the human capital part of S. Next slide, please. If you take anything away from this presentation that I'm giving today in these, what's left of my, I think, 5 minutes, how much time do I have left here? 3 minutes and 13 seconds, because I'm timing. Please focus on this particular slide that really recontextualizes or reframes the impact of human capital as a driver of sustainable economic performance. We've had a fundamental shift, and it's not just the practitioners, but it is the stakeholder community. So investors, customers, strategic partners, communities, and employees. And this is driven by the investment community, that where the SEC and most of the financial reporting bodies around the world are recognizing that human capital is not simply an investment or a sunk cost where you invest, you allocate budget, and you don't expect anything back from that budget. That's the old orientation. The new orientation is that human capital is actually an investment in an intangible asset, that what we invest in people should actually drive a return on that investment that should support the organization's success. So instead of just saying, oh, I'm allocating $10 to HR and it's a sunk cost and I'll never see that money again, to think about how can I invest $10 in human capital to generate a return on that investment? How can people actually drive human capital or value creation? And now that we have a new orientation, we need a new language. So this new vocabulary includes these metrics where we can actually understand at the aggregate level, at the collective level of the organization, or at the consolidated level of the organization, this concept of return on investment in human capital. So the first metric is HCROI, human capital return on investment. HCVA is human capital value add. HCII is human capital investment intensity. What percent of your budget, your operating budget, goes to people? Productivity, everybody's heard about. And then looking at new types of ways to measure efficiency and effectiveness of human capital in the organization. So we could look at things like a revenue expense ratio or productivity ratio or a compensation to productivity ratio. So it's very green, it's very new, it's very it's evolving, and it will help us better understand how to leverage or capitalize on our people in a way that drives sustainable performance without burning through or using up, like a resource, our people. So next slide, please. Intangible assets is not just a throwaway concept. I'm sure many of you have seen this, but according to Ocean Tomo, 90% of the S&P company's market value is driven by intangible assets. And if human capital is considered an intangible asset, then we are part of the value creating chain. So if A equals B, if human capital is an intangible asset and B equals C, intangible assets are driving market value, then A equals C. Human capital is driving market value. We have to think about a new way of quantifying that and capturing that. My time is up, so let me just go through these next couple of slides really lickety-split. One of the things that Jeff talked about was the ESRS S1 standard. When you get the slides, you can click on the video and the article that talks about this. It's really the standard that the European Reporting Advisory Group, EFRAG, with the CSRD, is requiring companies report on human capital performance. And as Jeff said, that was formalized actually last year. This is the first reporting metric, the first reporting cycle for companies, large companies, to report starting in 2025, with smaller, mid-sized companies and small companies reporting in the next 12 to 18 months. This is where we're going to see our first insight, our first glimpses into human capital efficiency and effectiveness. Next slide, please. In the United States, we anticipate that the SEC is going to release some guidelines for comment, hopefully this year. They are asking, or we believe they're asking for 4 specific data disclosures, the most important being the last one, which is an auditable line item on their income statement that represents their aggregated total human capital costs. So right now, companies basically obfuscate, they hide how much they're spending on human capital by allocating it to different line items. So this will give us more transparency to understand the relationship between investments in human capital and their ability to drive financial results. Next slide. And I'm going to just touch on this for a second. Materiality is the standard or the guideline or the yardstick that we use to understand whether or not we should invest in a company. So the guidelines, the standard and the reporting guidelines actually now talk about 2 different types of materiality. Financial materiality, so what moves the needle on financial performance, and impact materiality, which I think is brilliant because it's not just about how much money do companies make, but what is their social impact in the world. So you'll be seeing more of that. Next slide, please. I guess I'm done. So thank you for letting me go over a couple of minutes. Hope this was informative and enlightening, and I hope you'll all feel the same passion that we do about this topic.
Thank you so much, Farhan. So by the way, a quick compliment on your book. While I have been reading every chapter of your book, so once I was going through the process, I always have been looking at the hard metrics that you use that basically determine, the measurement part of everything that we can do in HR. Wonderful. Thank you. So with this, we can move to our next speaker, Oliver Otrade. He's currently working as the HR director for the Panasonic Consumer Electronics Europe. Besides his profession, he gave lectures to the students at the University of Nuremberg in human resource management. Oliver is an honorary judge at the Labor and the Social Court in Hamburg since 2012. He's also one of the founding members and deputy head of the German DIN Committee HR Management, which is part of the ISO TC 260. He's a strong belief that HR professionals should create tangible value with clear outcomes in all HR disciplines to overall business strategy and objectives. Therefore, transparent and aligned human capital reporting becomes more important. So, Oliver, happy to have your views.
Yeah, thank you very much, Zaid, for the nice introduction, and also a warm welcome from my side from Hamburg, which is in the northern part of Germany. And what I would like to explain you in the next couple of slides is regarding what is ISO and how has our work started many years before. So first of all, regarding ISO. So ISO stands for International Organization for Standardization. It's an independent, non-governmental international organization, and it was founded in 1947 in Geneva, which is in Switzerland. And the overall aim of ISO is to develop, publish standards to promote global consistency, quality, and competitively across various industry and fields. And what you can see also on the world map below, that in many countries, maybe most countries of the world, so we have so-called national standard bodies, which in some way are also associated and in strong liaison also with the ISO standard. So it's really a global network. So next, please. As ISO, what they are providing is really a governance structure. And within this structure, the most important pillar are the technical committees. And also what you can see here in the charts below, over 800 technical committees are now working in parallel on various topics. And you can also see that more than 25,000 standards has been released so far from ISO and also from the experts all over the world. And I think it's also very important to know here that this kind of work which we are doing in these technical committees, so we are all doing this on a voluntary base. So we are not getting any kind of money for this. So this is really what we are doing as experts, or let's say colleagues who are really interested in developing these kind of guidelines for the whole world. So therefore, it contains not only experts, but also from the industry, from the government, also from academia, like universities, and also other stakeholders who are really interested in setting up these global standards. And what is a standard in, let's say, in the short term? So it's really some kind of documentation. So where we are setting up rules, guidelines, or also some kind of specification that outlines the requirement for, it could be in the technical area, it could be for products, it could be for processes, or even for management standards. Next, please. Yeah, and here on this slide, you can see so how our journey began. So we have started in November 2011 with the first plenary meeting of our Technical Committee 260 in Washington, USA. And you can also hear the first member countries who joined that meeting in Washington. And also what you now can see in the other world map here is that more and more countries, also all over the world, are now really contributing in the TC 260, where we are working on various documents for the human resource management. Next. Yeah, and here I would like to highlight, because today we are speaking about the human resource management guideline for internal and external human capital reporting. So this was really one of the first guidelines we have ratified and published back to November 2018. And currently we are in the process for review and revision for the second edition. And this is now worked by the TC 260 and especially by the working group. And here we would also like to adapt the latest developments in the market, in the environment, which also put, let's say, a strong impact on the overall human capital reporting guideline. And as I also highlight here, number 4, so I don't want to go in detail regarding these, let's say, very administrative process for concluding a guideline. So currently, we will be soon announce the draft international standard for the revised standard on human capital reporting. And this will also come out for public review and commenting. So wherever you have an interest and you would like to learn about the new revised standard, so please also follow the ISO pages, or maybe you can also contact one of our colleagues. So if you would like to have more information where we are in the process at the moment, because I think now the really important time will come up where we will receive a lot of review and comments before we are publishing the second edition for this reporting. Yeah, this is all I would like to share with you, really high level. And now back to Zaid.
Wonderful. Thank you, Oliver, for giving us the summary. So if in the nutshell, I think what Oliver is talking with that the standard basically helps us in speaking one common language. And honestly speaking, and toward the start of my career, I have always been thinking why the doctor, the engineer, the auditors, the actuaries, they speak common language of the standards. Why cannot HR? So basically, it's that the dream comes true in the form of the overall standards, and particularly the ISO 30414, which links everything in the HR with the clear outcomes. So we have now the next speaker, Kyung Hao, founder and the CEO of the Beijing Century My Way Education Technology Incorporation, which offers management consulting, corporate training, and people development service. He has over 30 years management experience with the different companies, including Siemens and Walt Disney. Since 2016, as an expert of standardization administration of China, he plays active roles in the ISO TC 232, education and learning services, TC 260, HR management, TC 314, aging societies, TC 321, transaction assurance of the e-commerce, and TC 342, management consulting. He's done MBA from University of California in the USA and BS from Liaoning University of Technology in China. So over to you, Kyung.
Okay, thank you, Zahid, for the brief introduction about my profile. And it's my pleasure to meet so many experts and professionals in HR arena. And my part of presentation today is talking about the difference between guidelines and requirements, double quote, in the standard. So when you see a standard, you by looking at the title, many times it addressed with guidelines, requirements, or requirements with guidelines. So I'm trying to explain to you the main difference between guidelines and the requirements in standards lies in the level of obligation they impose on organizations and the way they should be applied. So let's take a look at guidelines. Guidelines are advisory in nature and provide recommendations of best practices for achieving a certain outcome or goal. So they offer flexibility in how organizations can implement the suggested practices and allow for variations based on specific circumstances. So compliance with guidelines is typically voluntary, and organizations may choose to follow them as part of a broader strategy for improving performance or achieving a certain level of quality. So let's look at the requirements. Requirements set specific criteria or rules that organizations must adhere to in order to comply with the standard. So they are prospective and provide clear, measurable expectations for performance, quality, or safety. Organizations that adopt the standard with requirements must follow them as stated in order to achieve certification or demonstrate compliance. So in short, in summary, while guidelines offer flexibility and recommendations for achieving best practices, requirements impose specific rules and criteria that organizations must follow to comply with the standard. So that's my presentation about the difference between guidelines and requirements. And I'd like to take some questions later on. If you have any concern about the HR management reporting development in China, I would like to give some information. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jackie. I finished my presentation.
Excellent. So this is an important question. The people ask, what's the difference between the guideline and the requirement standard. So this is one of the reasons that the group has decided to consider as part of the overall briefing. Thank you for sharing your insight. Okay. Next is Dr. Sabrina. Dr. Sabrina Pitt. She is a work, health, and aging consultant and a director of the WorkWiser International with 90 plus peer-reviewed publication and certified ISO 30414 lead auditor. She leverages her extensive background to support organization in implementing programs and evaluation that improve aging societies, create sustainable workforce, and integrate standards into the practice. She's the chair of the Standards Australia Committee on Aging Societies and head the Australian delegation for ISO 31314 Aging Societies, where she led the development of the ISO 25550 on aging workforce. She is invited globally to speak about the aging workforce issues, including in Peru, in Singapore. Currently, she serves on the several TC260, TC314 ISO working groups, including HR metrics, aging inclusive digital economies, and ISO 30414. She's a convener of the TC314 metrics, recognizes that 2022 Standards Hero by Standards Australia, and is a board member for not-for-profit organizations. She continues to impact workforce practices and policy through her leadership in standards practice globally. So, Dr. Sabrina, over to you.
Thank you, Zahid, and thank you, Zahid, for organizing this global webinar. I'm going to keep it very brief, as some of it has already been mentioned, but I was asked to talk about the purpose of ISO 30414 and the scope. So the purpose of ISO 30414 is to measure and report human capital which helps an organization to manage the risks and opportunities of its most valuable assets. As Solange said, it's people. So understanding our human capital leads to productivity improvements. It also leads to human capital performance understanding and a more sustainable workforce. So the comparison of performance across divisions and industries and locations, etc., can give your organization competitive advantage and improve decision-making within your company. So next slide, please. So the scope. So the scope is, sorry, I have to move this out of the way, is to consider and make transparent human capital contribution to the organization in order to support an organization's sustainability objectives. So it's applicable to all organizations of any type, size, nature, or complexity of the business, whether this is in public, private, or a voluntary sector, or for example, not-for-profit organizations. So there are also specific recommendations that someone else will talk about later for small to medium-sized businesses. So it's definitely not only for large businesses, as some people sometimes think. Next slide, please. So it's important to note that human capital analysis and reporting requires a collaborative interdisciplinary approach. Like Jeff said, the financials play an important role as well. And so by combining qualitative and quantitative analysis, and we focus on measuring factors that are within the organization's control within the document. So next slide, please. So ISO 30414 can help your organization with the contextual interpretations. So it can help you identify and discuss what matters most to your organization. So you can also use the standard for external reporting by using aggregated human capital reporting indicators to create and demonstrate the value of your business. For internal reporting, it's incredibly useful to use standardized human capital metrics to improve operational efficiency and strategic execution and hence your organizational decision-making. So, and the last thing it can definitely help you with is measuring and evaluating the organization's human capital in both quantitative and qualitative terms. I also want to conclude with saying that I'm at an AI summit today where there's a lot of talk about data. So I think there is a massive opportunity with the release of the new standards in the new year that the AI tools can help us make this a much easier process moving forward. Thank you, Saeed. Back to you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sabrina, for managing it despite your travel. We appreciate your participation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Nick Shafford. And Nick has over 50 years of the varied work experience, including senior general management and the finance roles. From 1989 to 2017, he ran his own management consulting and professional development company. Currently, he is officially retired, but still spends time on research and writing. He is the past chair of the Professional Standards Committee of the International Council of Management Consulting Institute and led the development of the competency model for CMC certification in over 50 global CMC institutes. He is also a member of the Mensa. Nick is a member of the Working Group 2, the Metrics, the Working Group of ISO TC 260. He believes that human capital is the untapped frontier of the competitive advantage and the value creation, but is poorly understood in the reporting. Thank you, and over to you, Nick.
Great, thanks, Saeed. It's again a pleasure to be with everybody on this group, and it's been a pleasure to actually work with everybody on this group. So there's a lot of work that's gone on behind the scenes here, and I think there's a lot of like minds. So as Saeed said, I have over 50 years of experience in both financial and general management, and 30 years in consulting and training. My sort of major interest and my passion is in organizational culture. And as you can see, the subtitle of the book is essentially not only the workplace battlefield, but where great talent goes to die. And I'm picking up on both on Solange's comments and on Jeff's comments. One of the problems with lack of disclosure is that organizations go out and spend a lot of money on talent and bring it into the organization. And what we really need to understand is how well are they creating an environment within that organization where the talent can be optimized, because people are the greatest asset, as Solange said. But in some cases, they don't have the opportunity to work at their best because the organization isn't creating a positive environment, and we're seeing high turnover and things like that. So my passion is, as I say, organizational culture. So that leads us to our question, well, how does my work link to ISO 30414? And the answer is what Jeff talked about, which is you need to know what's going on with your people. People are not only your greatest asset, you spend your largest amount of money typically on people. And as again, Solange said, we need to move from thinking away as people as a cost to the organization, where we're trying to drive the cost down, to people as an investment in the organization. Next slide. Or have I got it? Yeah, I think we're missing a few bits on here. So what are the 11 areas of disclosure in ISO 314? We were talking about this, Sabrina touched on the fact that we contain a number of different metrics. And if you look at the standard in section 4.7.1, there's a table 2, which I don't know if you hit the slide again, Zahid, whether the table will come up. Yes, there we go. Thank you. So table 2, which is in section 4.7.1, actually demonstrates the specifics that some of the other talkers have been mentioning. Again, Sabrina touched on the fact of large organizations, small organizations, internal and external measures. So the human capital areas, the categories, is that left-hand column there, and the metrics come in the second column. So each of the 11 metrics are explained in the following paragraphs in the standard, 4.7.2 through 4.7.12. And very helpfully, I think, there are real-life case study examples shown in the annex to the guideline as well. So not only can you see what the suggested metrics are, you can see examples of both how they're calculated and how they can actually be applied in practice. One other thing to remember, it's not just ISO 30414 that we're talking about here. This is the core document, which contains the main metrics. But in support of these metrics, there are also a number of ISO guidelines which our working groups have been developing, which are technical specifications around specific areas of these metrics. So, for example, there's a technical specification on how to develop the culture metrics in much more detail. There's a technical specification that only just came out a couple of months ago on the very topical area of employee engagement metrics. So there is a wealth of information, not only in suggested sort of high-level metrics, but on how you put these together. Next slide, please. So there are essentially 11 core areas. Let's start with the first one, which is compliance and metrics. There are 5 metrics suggested in compliance metrics. I'm not going to go through them all in detail, but this deals with some high-level things like tracking grievances, discipline issues, disputes, and the results of audits, and all related to human capital, obviously. The second one is a group of items around costs, human resources costs. And again, they talk about things like total workforce costs. One of the things Solange touched on is one of the SEC things that the US is trying to get disclosure on is total workforce costs, because for many organizations, looking at many people's annual accounts, you can't even see that information. And to try and assess human capital performance without understanding how much the organization is actually spending on its workforce is extremely difficult. So not only are some of the regulations moving in that direction, some of them already require this, but this particular ISO guideline does include it and is one of the suggested areas. The third one is obviously a very well-known area, diversity and inclusion, covers key areas, age, gender, disability, many things like that. And again, I re-emphasize here that many of these things are very consistent with the emerging requirements that are coming out of various governmental bodies and regulatory bodies in terms of greater disclosure, underpinning what Jeff was talking about, a lot of the whole area of ESG metrics around the social area. The fourth category is in leadership. Leadership here, essentially, we're talking about very important issues like the measuring trust, span of control, and leadership development. The next one, organizational culture, certainly an area that I was particularly concerned about. A couple of measures in organizational culture, mainly the area of employee engagement, satisfaction, and commitment, as well as retention rate, which is another critical area. The last one on this slide being health, safety, and well-being. Again, emphasize that this is very much aligned with and consistent with health and safety reporting that's already required in many jurisdictions. So what we've tried to do is to make sure that there is an accommodation, if you like, of the things which are normal practice in many jurisdictions and areas that we're moving towards. So again, as I say, these are consistent with areas like ISO 45001, which is focused around the health and safety area. Next slide, please. The next one is the whole area of productivity measurements. This very much deals with some of the traditional measures of human capital in terms of overall system performance reporting. Obviously, one of the key areas we have touched on, some of the speakers touched on earlier, is the human capital return on investment. That falls into this particular category as well. The next one is recruitment. This is fairly large. As you can see, there are 14 metrics in this area, broken down between recruitment, mobility, and employee turnover. Again, turnover, very consistent with greater transparency of what's going on in the organization. The next one is skills and capabilities. Obviously has to do with the total development and training costs of the organization, participation rates, and assessments of workforce competency. Again, absolutely critical if people are driving your value creation, as Solange talked about. We've got to understand how well the organization is doing in terms of developing and retaining the competencies it needs to do that. And succession planning being the next one, 3 metrics in that area, very much ensuring that there's depth for succession across the organization. Key to sustainability of the business model, of course, this is critical. And finally, workforce availability. What is the contingent of workforce we've got, full-time, part-time? And finally, the last measure in that category is in absenteeism rates. So as you can see, there's a wealth of measurements contained here that not only help organizations move towards good practices or leading practices in measurement, but very much aligned with where the world seems to be going from an oversight and regulatory point of view. Next one, please. Just to reiterate what, again, some of the earlier speakers have said and what it says in the chart that I showed, there are suggestions in 30414 for both internal and external reporting. And one thing that was so important and remains so important is that there are different needs for large and smaller organizations. So we don't have a one-size-fits-all. We actually suggested in the metrics that certain metrics should be used for both large and small organizations, but certain will be more applicable to larger organizations than smaller ones. It's very broad. Obviously, it covers the core leading practice approach. How ISO works, I think Oliver talked about this. One of the very important things to recognize is these standards are created not only by volunteers, but by people who are doing this work on a day-to-day basis. So these are not only academics, but practitioners, people working in the HR industry, who are one of the speakers mentioned the head of the tip of the arrow, the tip of the activity. So hopefully these clearly represent where the world is going. Sorry, I lost. Thank you. Obviously, doesn't need to be said, I don't think, that the metrics in here need to be ultimately determined by each organization's own strategy. But given that HR is such a critical part of strategy, there obviously needs to be not only strategic planning for HR management, but the metrics to support how are we doing against that. So what we see in here is a combination of process, activity, and outcome measures. So I think that is probably my last one, is it?
Yeah.
Yep. So thank you very much for your interest and attention. Again, watch what this group is doing, because I think we're heading in a very interesting direction of trying to bring together where the world is going, which is being represented very much by the regulatory areas, although that's a bit of a lagging area in some cases, and what's actually going on in organizations. So I think this is a great group to work with, and sort of watch this space. Thanks very much, Zahid, and thank you, group.
Thank you, Nick, for sharing the overall structure of the standard. And one other thing you talked about, the culture. Definitely, it's a great element. And this is something that really excites me to work with the members of this group, that everybody walks the talk. I read your book, Cost of Poor Culture, in which you measure the actually opportunity cost of not taking care of the culture, how it translates into the business implications. That's a wonderful piece and great work.
Thank you, Zahid.
With this, we move to our next speaker, Heather Whiteman. Heather Whiteman is an expert in people analytics, talent transformation, and the future of work. She has a PhD in the Human Capital Management and Master in Industrial Organization Psychology and a Data Science certification. Heather is an associate teaching professor of People Analytics and Data Design and Delivery courses at the University of Washington Information School, and a professional faculty member at the University of California, Berkeley. Heather is a Fulbright scholar and a board advisor to the organization, a member of the International Organization for Standardization Technical Advisory Group, TC260. He was previously the vice president, the global head of people strategy, analytics, and digital learning, HR operation and technology, the General Electric Digital. She has led organizations through hyper-growth, digital transformation, merger, acquisition, and restructuring with the use of advanced data-informed talent management techniques. Heather's passion and research focus lies in helping individuals and organizations prepare for the future of work, digital transformation, and enabling the future driven by fair data and people analytics insights for the good. Her research focuses on the social justice implications of quantifying people in the world of work. And Heather, once again, for being awake at the during the midnight hours and being with us today. Over to you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Well, it is the summertime here in Seattle, Washington, so the sun is going to come up soon, and I have coffee. But hi, everyone. Happy that you're here. My friend Jeff Higgins earlier likes to introduce himself as a recovering CFO, and so while I don't normally do this, I think today I will introduce myself as a recovering HR executive. So in my past career, I was an executive in the HR function. I am now a professor. But I bring up my past experience in the HR function because I really wanted to talk today about how beneficial these human capital reporting standards can be for directors, for company secretaries, for chief human resource officers, and for really anyone in the HR function. And I really had 11 points that I'd like to make. So one slide, but a lot of different things. Many of these connect with things that others have said today. But I wanted to call out, first and foremost, I believe in people data. I believe in the power of data for people, not just about people. But I do think that if we all agree that people are one of the most important assets of an organization, as many people have already said today, that we really need to understand it clearly, and we need to be able to show that value as best as possible. Today, organizations are not great at doing that. And I don't think it's because they disagree that there's a lack of value or because they don't want to do it. I think it's because it can be difficult to measure people. People are a difficult, squishy, intangible thing. However, the process gets easier when you have common, consistent standards from which to build on. And so by starting with a common set of reporting standards, we can all get to an easier, more enhanced baseline, and then also more enhanced, advanced ways of using it. So I believe that when we can pick up a common framework like ISO 30414, we can get to better data collection and analysis in the future. If we can do that, we can build from that common base to be able to do some of the stuff that I know many of us, especially those in the HR function, especially those that are directors in companies, are often wanting to do, which is to connect it back to things like cost and benefit and return on investment. And only once you've established a way to tie back to data can we start to do that. So having common, consistent standards can help build baselines that would enable you to be able to support those kinds of cost benefits analysis. And those kinds of analyses, they are going to be what's going to connect you to that ability to make strategic decisions within an organization. Those strategic decisions might be internal about how to make decisions and trade-offs about where you spend your resources or your times. They might be more broad about how you play with your market strategy and where your company's going broader term or with your investments. And when you can use that kind of data about your most important asset, then you can make the smarter decisions and you can communicate about why you're making those decisions and what you're making them about with other stakeholders, whether those stakeholders are internal to your organization. You know, maybe you are an HR professional and you need to communicate to the finance team why you need to make the investments that you need to make, or maybe they're external. Maybe you are a company director, maybe you're in the C-suite and you need to speak with investors about why it's important that we make the kinds of investments in our organization that we need to make. By having the ability to tie back to these things, that communication gets easier and it gets tied back to this value, and it gets tied back to this value about our critical asset, which is our people. The other point that I'd like to bring out is when we start having the conversation about common, consistent metrics, benefits, value, strategic decision-making, especially for those who are in the HR function, this can start to bring about a really strong sense of credibility for where we're coming from with our profession and our field. It gives us the opportunity to talk about the things that we want to push forward, the initiatives that we want to put forward on behalf of the employees and in order to make the organization better, but with a stronger sense of credibility based on the data, based on the evidence, and based on the strategic alignment from it. It's also going to come with some nice enhanced efficiency that comes with streamlined reporting. So I mentioned I'm a recovering HR executive. I had responsibility for the HR operations space. And if anybody has worked in that space, you will know that reporting in the HR field is challenging. There's always confusion about what exactly is our headcount and how exactly do we compute attrition rate, and you know what exactly does count as an incident, and what is the ratio of retention versus this. All of these questions tend to be things that every organization has to sit down and define for themselves over and over and over again. And we find that organizations are wasting a lot of time trying to redefine what metrics mean, when instead there are standards like ISO 30414, where you could pick it up and you can say, oh, look, here's a definition for this metric. Why don't we just follow this one because it's a standard, it has consistency, and then we can have a much streamlined, much faster approach rather than spending a lot of time pulling and debating different approaches. There's still room within those definitions for making adjustments as is appropriate for the needs of your organization. But I know that a lot of operational efficiency would come out of following common, consistent standards along the way. And with that operational efficiency, with that credibility, with all of the alignment to strategic decisions, you also get this wonderful way to be able to tie out to your organizational goals. So the beauty of having the experts who are involved in building ISO 30414 is that many of them were experts in talent management or organizational management or leadership positions. And so much of what you will find in the ISO standards are specifically aligned with organizational objectives in mind, and then also with talent management objective in mind. And so what you're going to find is that each of these standards are specifically designed to align to organizational goals and specifically align to different talent management aspects. So you just saw Nick give a great example and listed out on the slides all the different areas of talent management that are covered. You know, we had different recruiting and safety, well-being, health, all these different areas are covered there, and make sure that each standard is connected along the way. And beyond just being able to be connected, you have the opportunity to use these to help prevent and proactively address things. So risk management, for example, is a huge benefit to organizations. When you track things like safety, health, and well-being, and you have common, consistent practices for doing that, you can make a really big impact in how your organization is going to be successful in these areas. And you can also use these kinds of approaches for benchmarking, finding best practices with others. I know that benchmarking in the people space can be quite difficult, again, because most organizations have different definitions for what they mean when they say these things. Using common, consistent standards could give you the opportunity to have a consistent measure and then truly be able to measure how your organization is doing in comparison to other organizations, and then to see where there are examples of outstanding practices that can then be used as exemplars and seen as best practices. The one thing that I want to end on is this one for career development. And I don't mean career development in the talent management space. You know, career development for our employees is absolutely a great thing, but I would consider that part of talent management. I mean career development for the directors, the company secretaries, the HR professionals, having the ability to identify, define, measure, and then communicate standard common ways of thinking about the most important asset of the company, which is the people, positions you as the person with the most important information for the organization, and really is an opportunity to be in a career accelerating position. To have the insights about people puts you in a position to have the insights to make the big strategic decisions for the organization. And I would encourage anyone who's in these kinds of positions to consider embracing these as an opportunity for you to be a real strategic player in your career, and just think about how much power there is in being the one who can advocate for the human capital in your organization. So I'm a huge fan of ISO 30414. I love data, and I think that these standards are going to give us an amazing baseline to be able to do so much more on top of them. So appreciate everyone who's also passionate about this, and I will turn it over to the next topic.
Wonderful. So Heather, I think you have presented all the assortment of the benefits that it offers in a wonderful way. And I would like to mention that now there's the paradigm shift in terms of the value creation of the HR. Yesterday, I was reading an article, the latest article by the Dave Aldrich, where he talks about the HR value creation model, and that is based on the stakeholder capitalism. So there's a payoff for everyone, all the stakeholders. And I think this is you have described everything in a very wonderful way, that how the different stakeholders can benefit from this process. Okay, so with this, we can move to our next speaker, Suhair Abu Salem. She's the Human Capital and the Communications Director for A3 & Co. I hope I'm pronouncing the name of the company correctly. A strategic and a practical thinker, certified senior international human resource professional from HRCI, ISO 30414 lead auditor, and certified international trainer from International Association of the People and Performance Development, whilst creating a sustainable high level of human capital management to impact the business bottom line. provided consultation and delivered training programs based on 14 plus years of direct experience, worked toward the high standards and best-in-class practices in the different international organizations for different HR, management, the people development programs at different levels, in different languages, the different countries, and diverse cultures. So over to you, Suhail.
Thank you so much, Zahid, and welcome everyone. I think most of the inputs they have already covered why ISO 34014 is becoming essential for organizations. As you could see that ISO 34014 is the only international standard for human capital management and reporting worldwide. So as you could see, this standard is not just about ticking boxes for compliance. Instead, it offers a strategic edge that can elevate various aspects of your business operations. So first of all, one of the common challenges that faces organizations worldwide is quantifying the human resources effectively. And ISO 34014 provides a solid framework, as you could see in multi-inputs, for consistent measurement and comparison of human capital metrics. So this consistency is crucial for pinpointing areas of improvement across different levels of your organization, which can help your company to make informed and data-driven decisions. In other words, it turns workforce data into actionable insights, paving the way for strategic planning and effective execution. Also, transparency is another cornerstone for today's business success, and ISO 34014 plays a crucial role here. By adhering to this standard, you promote a greater openness with all stakeholders, from employees to investors to regulators, customers, and even to the local community as well. So this openness builds higher level of trust and confidence. And one of the standout features of ISO 34014 is its ability to integrate cross-functionally. It brings the collective knowledge, skills, and abilities across various functions, whether they are from the legal, communications, the IT, HR, health and safety, investor relations, or finance. So this standard bridges these departments. In addition, in the world of operational excellence, ISO 34014 serves as a very powerful tool. So this standard helps in establishing optimized workflows and processes, leading to greater efficiency across the board. And adopting ISO 34014 can significantly boost your competitive edge, as research shows that companies excelling in people analytics are far more likely to outperform their peers financially, which means it can help your business stand out in the marketplace. Another critical aspect that ISO 34014 can help in is the compliance and risk management, which is critical for any business operation. Here, ISO 34014 supports companies in meeting human capital reporting regulations effectively, and it provides a solid framework for managing risks associated with the entire employee life cycle. And absolutely, in today's business landscape, sustainability is more important than ever. And ISO 34014, as you could see, it has a compatibility with many of the reporting frameworks, but in specific, the requirements of ESG, and in particular, by quantifying the human capital related requirements. So this alignment is not only to improve your company's sustainability credentials, but also it demonstrates a company commitment to a green, responsible, ethical, and sustainable business practices. And from a financial perspective, ISO 34014 offers significant benefits. It provides investors with clear insights into your people practices and their impact on profitability and the return on investment, which can make your company more attractive to potential funding sources, especially those focused on socially responsible and sustainable investments. And that will also simplify your journey in the market expansion strategies, and it can help also to gain global acceptance for your products and services. So to wrap up, complying with ISO 3414 is much more than compliance exercise. It's about harnessing these requirements to drive superior business performance, to enhance customer satisfaction, and to capitalize on market opportunities. So this comprehensive approach to human capital management can really transform how your company operates and competes on a global stage. Thank you so much, and I hope this overview of ISO 3414 has provided valuable insights into the strategic benefits of ISO 3414. Thank you.
Super. So thank you so much for reinforcing the concept that people management is an intangible aspect, but intangible does not mean immeasurable. Everything is measurable, and it can be linked to the organization outcomes. Okay, with this, we move to our next speaker, Shunsuke Hosaka-san. He's the founder and CEO of the HC Produce Incorporation, Japan. His client work involves helping organizations to develop succession planning and to introduce ISO 30414 to realize long-term growth. He has certified 14 organizations. I think so far this is highest in the world against the ISO 30414 as of June 2024. Before establishing HC Produce, Shunsuke led organization and leadership development practice group for 10 years at Dream Incubator Incorporation, a Japanese management consulting firm, and held its clients' human capital management. Shunsuke received BA in political science from Keio University and MS in international affairs from Florida State University. He's ISO TC 260 Mirror Committee's Secretariat of Japan and authorized ISO 30414 lead consultant. So over to you.
Thank you, Zahid, for your introduction, and it's a great honor to be here. So let me briefly explain about what's going on practically in the world. And as of today, there are 20 companies that have been certified against ISO 3414. 5 companies in Germany, and 14 in Japan, and 1 in Korea. It started from 2021 from Deutsche Bank Group, where Hilda belonged, and gradually increased over 2022 and 23. And as of now, it's still increasing. And I would like to explain the situation in Japan because there's an increasing number of companies interested in ISO 3414. Next slide, please. What's happening in Japan? This is the number of ISO 3414 certified professionals, individuals. We do professional certification program quarterly based, and you can see the number of people who've been certified as a professional increasing rapidly, and there's over 800 now, and many of these professionals come from consulting firms. Next page, please. There are about 50 companies who have become our partners and who have sent their consultants to our program. And they are joining our program because their clients are interested in human capital reporting and asking for their help. So when we calculate the number of companies who have started to introduce ISO 3414 in Japan, we estimate that it's more than 500 now. So to the next slide, please. The reason behind this big reason is that it has become mandatory in Japan for companies to report human capital. As you can see in the bottom, last year, the Japanese Financial Services Agency has announced a new rule to make it mandatory for public companies to report human capital in their securities report. So with this regulatory background, it has become mandatory for organizations to report human capital. Next page, please. But those companies don't know how to report human capital. But so ISO 3414 gives a kind of guidance to them what to do and how to report. So this is the reason why Japanese companies are now started to introduce ISO 3414. And I will also briefly explain how should we write human capital reports. Next slide, please. Many of the ISO 3414 certified organizations have issued human capital reports. And this is a snapshot of the reports from each organization. And it doesn't have to be human capital reports. Some organizations do it through IR report or annual reports. So next slide, please. Here are the 5 points for writing human capital report. So first thing is that there's no right answer for writing a human capital report. ISO 3414 doesn't specify how to report that. It could be integrated report, or it can be human capital report or ESG report, or just put it on a web page. So you can do it anyway. And the second point is that think of who you want to communicate with. Our colleague has presented about the importance of stakeholder communication, and especially investor could be the primary target, but it's not only investors, it could be donors or customers or even job seekers. In Japan, many companies are starting to report human capital to attract talent because in Japan there's a decreasing number of workforce. And some companies do it to attract their own workers, their employees. So it is important to think of who you want to convey your message. And third point is data is of course critical, but narrative explanation is important as well, because data alone does not tell the meaning of the number without the context. So, for example, a turnover rate for 3% for an organization could be good or bad. For a company who sets a KPI for 10%, 3% is too low. But for a company who sets a KPI for 1% turnover, 3% is too high. So without the context or KPI or some explanation, the number itself does not explain enough. And the fourth point is it is very important to show the link between business strategy and HR strategy. It's close to narrative explanation, but especially investors, they want to see the relationship or correlationship between the human capital metrics and the possibility of future growth of that organization. So it is very important that the data shown, human capital data reported, is related to the business strategy of the organization. And the last point is that ISO 30.4 metrics are not the only metrics. So some organizations have their own metrics, and some industry could have their own metrics. So using ISO 30.4, you can also report your own metrics. So we always recommend to use ISO 30.4 as a tool for reporting. So with this, I'll finish my presentation. Thanks for your attention. Back to you, Zahid.
Okay, super. So thank you so much for sharing with us the overall condensed version of the, what all is happening in your market and what to keep in mind while writing a report. And also, we appreciate your effective role modeling in terms of influencing and motivating all the stakeholders for their effective engagement with the ISO 30414. Okay, so our now next speaker is Dr. Kyung-Soo Shin, and he's the founder of the SGI, Sustainable Development Growth Institute, which is a very famous company focused on the leadership training and the organization culture consulting in the Seoul, South Korea. He's a member of the Leadership Development Committee in the South Korea, which is a non-government organization to study and report what the Korean CEO leadership has to be. Furthermore, he's an HR advisor of the InnoBiz Association in the South Korea. His final goal is going to support the sustainability of the Korean company through human capital enforcement. To make his goal come true, he is now developing himself to promote ISO 30414 to the Korean companies. He's the first mover called an authorized consultant of ISO 30414 in the South Korea. So over to you, Shen.
Thank you, Zahid. Before showing my presentation file, I'd like to say that I'm very impressed by the speech of Hosaka Shunsuke. The kind of ambience of the situation of Japanese, the current spreading out of the ISO 30414. Anyway, I'd like to say my presentation file. I'm very happy to be able to talk about the Korean situation regarding ISO 30414. There are three main topics to announce today. First, the background of ISO 30414 being introduced in Korea. Second, domestic spread situation of 30414. And third, the situation of ISO 30414 certification. Firstly, when it comes to ISO 30414 itself, 30414 was first introduced in South Korea in December 2022. After I attended the TIS 260 general meeting held in Berlin, Germany in 2022, I wrote an article related to the HR global standards discussed there, and I sent it to the Hangyeong, the #1 economy newspaper in South Korea. The related content was about the global trend and the necessity of ISO 30414. Surprisingly, several companies contacted me after reading this article and expressed their interest. And I constantly publish related articles in HR magazine and the other newspaper. As their articles are posted online, people seem to be gaining interest. Zahid, second slide. Next slide. Second one is the domestic spread situation of 30414. After issuing a newspaper article, many companies gave me their interest about ISO 30414. And I decided to open consultant course, just like Japan. 5 people, at the first time, 5 people in charge of HR department enrolled this consultant course. The time was March 2023, last year. And in September, I opened a second course, and at this time, 20 people registered. And this year, 2024, this year, March, 16 people completed a course and received a consultant certification. That means that the number of receiving consultant certification of ISO 30444 are 40 people. However, it can be said that the purpose of taking a certification course is a strong nature of studying to find out what the ISO 30414 is. FYI, the ISO 30414 consultant course that I am conducting is the only one course about 30414 in South Korea. Zahid, next slide, please. Third one is the situation of ISO 30414 certification. Finally, the first company in South Korea to receive ISO 30414 certification was born in May this year. I'm very happy. The above company is in the pharmaceutical field and is name of Dong-A Social Holdings. In South Korea, it is a company with a very high reputation as one of the top 10 companies in the pharmaceutical industry. The certification audit was conducted by our friend Jeff, CEO of HCMI, and I also did my best to help Jeff finish ISO 30414 audit about Dong-A. The time I spent with Jeff was very enjoyable. It was very happy time. And although it was hard work, it was very happy to become the Dong-A to be certified. Currently, there are two companies in South Korea preparing for receiving ISO 30414 certification. I can't announce the name of the company because I haven't received the official application of the certification yet. But there are very famous companies. Above things, current situation about ISO 30414 in South Korea, although they are still far away from global trend and below status of our neighbor country, Japan, I will do my best to so that more companies in Korea can receive ISO 30414 certification. Thank you very much, my colleagues.
Excellent.
Before I finish my presentation, I wanna give my honor to Salon, our best colleague, because I'm reading a book. I got so much of inspiration about human capital due to our colleagues, Salon. Thank you, Salon.
Super.
That's all. Thank you very much, my colleagues.
So, as you mentioned that I think you've been able to successfully implemented this standard for the individuals and also one of the organizations. So this brings us to an understanding that HR itself, whether it's a practitioner, consultant, researcher, academician, this is one of the key stakeholders of this process. And you can add a lot of value to the industry, and also, it has, I think, the strong economic prospects for the individuals as well. Thank you. That's why I said the sun never sets on this group. It reminds me to the time frame. I think 10th, 11th November in Washington D.C. when the ISO TC 260 was created. I was one of them, and there were 4 countries in the working group HR metrics: U.S., Germany, France, Netherlands, and Pakistan itself. And by now you can see how this tide is rising and how more and more people are getting involved with the standards. Okay, so next is I would like to have some views about the different aspects of the 30414, particularly from the individual capability point of view. I'll skip my introduction. I can only say that I'm passionate for this 30414 and particularly human capital analytics right from the outset. I created my company on the philosophy of this linking, the people metrics with the organizational outcomes. And that's why I called it the HR metrics, the name of the company. And the important thing is that while we offer this, this standard as a document and a comprehensive framework to the industry, what are the principles that we follow? In that context, I think we must be aware that for us, the guiding principle is already in the form of the ISO 17024, which provides some guidelines for the bodies operating the certification of the persons. Because as one of the speakers mentioned, that this is a guideline standard. It's not a requirement standard, but still we need to have certain principles in mind. What are those principles that we keep in mind while offering certification of the individuals who belong to various organizations and the people are in the different parts of the countries? Things like the competence. We make sure that the people that, whosoever is involved in teaching the ISO 30414 has the competency, because the ISO 30414 in the first instance is not that comprehensive that it covers every aspect, all the descriptors, all the kind of 100% formulas. Those are not there in the standard, but by doing kind of research with the different established bodies around the world, we are able to get, I think, the relevant information that can put us in a very good position to, improve the quality of the understanding. The second important aspect is that while we conduct the certification of this ISO 30414, we ensure impartiality. So a kind of firewall between the assessment and the teaching, so that there's no short circuit over there. So the group which is involved with teaching of the ISO 30414 is not involved in the assessment or the evaluation. And our goal is to ensure currency of the expertise through the process of recertification, because this is an evolution. Now, very soon you would be, hopefully, maybe during this year or maybe sometime later, you come across the next version of ISO 30414. And there are so many things which are happening around ISO 30414, like Jeff talked about some of the emerging standards. So how you can draw the better connections and how you can stay current with the emerging concept that we also promote through our teaching. And for that matter, we follow a certain process of certifications, like the ethical undertaking, just to make sure that the people represent what they're supposed to represent, and there's no misrepresentation on this. So there's a proper disclosure in terms of the content, the structures, the status of the standards, the kind of different organization structures with the different the standards are applicable, which is a small, medium, or a large organization, and the process that we follow for the offering the trainings and also the assessments. And lastly, as I said, just to ensure the currency of the expertise, we have a defined mechanism for the recertification. So on the basis of this whole structure, we are able to come up with a program that has I think, a win-win for everyone. As a practitioner, as a consultant, as an academician, you can benefit from it, but while making sure there's no conflict of interest. And that means that if you're acting as a consultant with a company, you're not supposed to be an auditor with that company. So this is the key element in the entire process. And using the same framework, fortunately, we can say that we've been able to develop, I think, over 800 people so far around the world. I think, and we also have our partners in Japan, and Shunsuke Hosaka has already mentioned that this is the highest number so far, I think, mainly in the Japanese market. And the people that come not only from, they belong to different territories, the different regions. So there's a good mix of the people almost in every part of the world now, within our homeland and outside. So they represent the HR, the overall, they are in a position to offer not only consulting and training, but build the organization in whatever way the organization deems appropriate. The ISO 30414 has already a defined structures that is in the form of I think, the overall 11 different clusters, the 58 metrics. And those metrics are basically the applicability of those metrics. It depends upon the structure of the organization. The organizations could be if it is a large organization, all 58 metrics are applicable internally. But for the external reporting, only 23 are valid. If it's a small and a medium organization, there are 32 metrics which are applicable. And for the external reporting, only the 10 metrics are applicable. So I think this was all about the overall, building capacity of the overall industry from the professional certification point of view. So with this, I would like to move to our next speaker, Dr. Heiko, one of our, key practitioner who has been very instrumental in building the capacity of the overall market. I think he was the first certifier on the earth. And by certifying a company, if I remember correctly, DWS Asset Management. So Heiko is a board member and the senior partner with the 4C Group, Germany. And this management consultancy, he studied business administration and engineering at the University of Karlsruhe and did a doctoral degree at the University of Berlin. And with the 4C Group, Heiko is responsible for the 4Cs, HR management practices, supporting companies all over the globe in HR management related projects. He joined ISO and DIN in 2016 and is one of the content authors of the Human Capital Reporting Guidelines, ISO 30414, which was established in 2018. He supports organization in implementing ISO 30414 and also offers certification services for the company in the ISO context. Heiko is a board member of the Goinger Quiz, a think tank for people responsible for HR position, the business and the science, who act as a thought leaders and drive initiative for sustainable employment. So Heiko, over to you.
Thanks, Zahid. Can you hear me, by the way?
Very well.
Right, wonderful. So thanks for having me, Zahid. It's really an honor to be part of this group and to have the opportunity to talk to you guys. And well, hello everyone. I'd like to talk to you about two topics. So first of all, which organizations provide certifications at all. And on the next slide, I'll talk to you about how a certification process could possibly look like. So let's start with the organizations that provide certifications. So very important for you to know is that these are only examples, and I'm completely sure that I forgot some organizations or companies that provide certifications, so sorry for that, but at least these are some organizations that we as a group are aware of, that they provide certification services in the context of ISO 30414, because a lot of these companies have senior executives that are part of our group, Human Capital Impact. So let's start with HC Produce in Japan. Our esteemed member, Shunsuke Hosaka-san, he's the founder and CEO of HC Produce. He offers certifications in Asia, especially for companies, first of all, but also for individuals. Then for C Group, my own company, we offer certifications for companies only. We are a management consultancy and with a strong human resource management practice. And we offer certifications for companies only, not for individuals. And then we also have certainly Zahid HR Metrics. So Zahid is CEO of HR Metrics. And he just informed us that he had hundreds of individuals certified against ISO 30414. He's headquartered in Pakistan. And then we have HCMI, Human Capital Management Institute, with Jeff Higgins is the founder, also an esteemed member of our group. He offers also certifications for companies headquartered in the USA, as far as I know, in Los Angeles. And then there's also the Human Resource Standards Institute. A lot of you guys probably have heard of this institute. They offer certifications for companies, especially in the area of ISO 30414 and also ISO 30415. So these are only some examples of companies that provide certification services. As I already said, we probably missed one or the other company that is also providing certification services. Then please to the next slide, Zahid. Thanks. And now I want to talk to you about how an organization can get certified. So the first step should certainly be to implement ISO 30414 into the human capital reporting of the specific organization. So certainly, first of all, you have to purchase the standard. You can purchase it directly at the ISO homepage. Just Google ISO 30414, and then you'll find directly the landing page where you can purchase the standard, and then certainly read it, understand it, and implement it. within your own human capital reporting. Shunsuke Hosaka just told us how to put together a decent human capital report. So do this as the first step. And then if you implemented ISO 3414 within your human capital reporting, then the next step can certainly be the certification. So apply at a certification body to get certificated and mandate the certification body to perform a certification assessment. And then the certification organization will do this assessment. And if this will be successful, you certainly get a certificate and an assessment report by the certification organization, perhaps by one of those that I mentioned before on the previous slide. And then I think step 3, from my understanding, is the most important step, because a certification is nothing if you do not do something with it. If you do not use and do something of value with the transparency that you produced by implementing ISO 3414 within your human capital reporting. So, and therefore, step 3 for me is the most important step, and this is what I call benefits collection. You certainly can, use this certification in order to do marketing around it and communication internally, externally, PR campaigns and things like that. With this, you certainly can further position your HR function, for example, or even your company in general, that you're further professionalizing your HR management framework within your company. But what you can also do is you can do benchmarking for these KPIs with other companies that have been certified, because now you have a higher level of comparability. It's not like comparing apples with bananas. Now it's rather like comparing green apples to red apples, for example. So the comparability is much higher, because you can rely on, if another company that you're benchmarking with is also certified against 3414, then you can be sure that the KPIs that you are benchmarking are, calculated very similar to the calculation that you used. So do benchmarking, try to understand where you are and how you can get better. And then what I call active management of disclosed KPIs, not only providing transparency, not only disclosing the KPIs, but also start to actively manage these KPIs and, in order to increase your performance within these KPIs and then automatically within your workforce and within your company. So this is, in a nutshell, our understanding of the certification process. Thanks for your interest. Thanks for your attention. And again, please follow us, our group, Human Capital Impact, on LinkedIn. And if you have any questions regarding this topic, please do not hesitate to contact one of us or me directly. And then over to you, back to you, Zahid. Thanks.
So much. Thank you, Heiko, for putting this information together. I think this is a key question, one of the key questions that the people ask: how to get certified, and most importantly, how to have access to the authentic and the reliable organizations which are truly compliant of the standards in the true letter and the spirit. And, okay, so we now move to our last speaker, and he's Brad Boyson. He's the co-founder and CEO of the HR Learning, a boutique capital consultancy based in Dubai, UAE. Mr. Boyson has been an active ISO HR standards member since project inception, Washington, DC 2011. He's currently convener, ISO 30414 Human Capital Reporting, and the vice chair of the Standards Canada Council, Mirror Committee for the ISO TC 260. A frequent international keynote speaker, his contribution to the professional body of the HR knowledge include publishing a chapter on the global HR economics, as well as co-authoring 3 different professional study guides, preceded by 5 years as an exam item writer for HRCI GPHR certifications. His diverse global practitioner experience includes head of the HR operations role for Mitsubishi Corporation, Vancouver, Canada, Royal Caribbean International, Miami, USA, and Imar, Dubai, UAE. During his practitioner career, he worked on the different inhabited continent, coupled with the overseeing workforce diversity and in excess of the 80 different nationalities. And he's going to talk about now what's coming ahead. So over to you, Brad.
Thank you, Zahid. Just confirming you can hear me?
Very well.
Wonderful. Well, I want to thank all of those people watching live who've gone through all of the excellent speakers so far. As Zahid mentioned, my section, I don't have any slides to present, and I'll explain that shortly, is on version 2 of the standard. So part of the reason I don't have slides is that it's still a work in progress, and there's nothing conclusive until the standard is actually, the version 2 of the standard is actually published. But what I wanted to talk about a bit today is just sort of the direction to which the technical committee is going without getting into any specifics. And as you can imagine, when we reopened the working group for 30414, our first plan of action was to sort of study the gap, do a gap analysis in terms of what had changed since the original publication in 2018 and what were the market needs 5 years later. And as you can imagine, in any field, there are a lot of things change in a period of 5 years. When the original 30414 was published, it was the only entity and standard in this human capital dedicated space. Since that time, several significant global entities have entered into the human capital standards and regulation space. And part of our mandate as a working group is to enhance version 1, and I emphasize the word enhance, but also try to look for areas of alignment with these other international standards. So ISO has that unique position of being international in every sense of the word, in terms of its working groups, in terms of its mandate. And so I just wanted to list some of the sort of areas that we deemed early on in this revision that were areas for improvement, and keeping in mind the consistency with the general doctrine of ISO of continual improvement. So if you think of the standard itself in sort of 2 buckets, you have the metrics area of it, but it is a reporting standard as well, and it's not one or the other, it's a combination of both. So in terms of our gap analysis, the first thing that we came up with as an area for improvement was more direction, if you will, in terms of guidance. As a few of our speakers have mentioned before, this is not a requirement standard, it is a guidance standard. And so what were some of the areas that we felt we could enhance on? One of them was, as other speakers have mentioned, is more of an alignment with sustainability. Back in 2018, there were entities and discussions sort of as to framing the concept of sustainability. Some people equate it with ESG. And since that time, we felt it was important to be more explicit in terms of the standards alignment with sustainability. The second one that a few people have mentioned throughout this presentation is materiality. Now, I'm not going to do a deep dive into materiality. It is a very multifaceted topic. But as some of our speakers have mentioned, the concept of relevant, impactful information related to human capital was an area that we felt we could enhance in the guidance as well. One of the areas that, and again, I think it was Shinsuke-san who mentioned this, is that version 1 of the standard doesn't give explicit directions on how to prepare a report on human capital reporting. And it was felt that we could be more explicit in that areas as well, without sort of giving a template per se. There has been an alignment with different entities in the global standard space to converge on a common framework for disclosure. So as part of our update of the standard, we're going to be a bit more explicit on how to present a human capital report. One of the areas that probably you would anticipate is that, did we miss anything? in version 1? Were there any metrics that should have been included? Were there metrics that perhaps were a bit redundant or overemphasized? So again, it's a work in progress. I can't be explicit on what the outcome of that will be, but I just wanted to update everyone, as that's part of the mandate of the working group, is to find where there might have been some metrics that could be added to be more comprehensive, but also in terms of the efficiency of the standard itself, where there might be some redundancy of metrics, where we might do some consolidation. That's really sort of the high-level overview that I wanted to share with everyone. I'm sure there would be questions as to when the version 2 will be coming out. And again, this doesn't have a specific answer. It's based on the speed at which the working group goes through the various stages of the ISO development process for standards. As others have mentioned, we've just entered into the draft international stage of this, which is sort of just over halfway, if you will. That's sort of a heuristic, don't take it literally, of the development of the standard. But I think it's fair comment to say that we're targeting having this enter into the public domain as a published document. Fair comment in terms of probably Q1 of 2025. So I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to pass it back to Zahid for any follow-up, and I'm not sure if we're going to do questions or anything, Zahid, but I leave it to you.
Thank you so much. So with this, all the speakers, we are done with their talks, and now I think all the time is up. We can still have some time for the question or the comments that anybody may like to have, and then we can would like to close this webinar. So anyone with any questions or comments, feel free to type in the chat box, or if you wish to speak, that would be preferred. Anyone from within the speakers or the participants, feel free to get involved.
David Simmons from HCM Metrics in UK. Thank you, everybody, for a wonderful overview of all that's been happening in the last few years. It's good to see some marketing in this area, and I commend everybody in pushing forward in this very important topic.
Thanks for your remarks, David Simmons. Okay. Thank you, Nick, for sharing your email ID. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, here is the website of the HCM Human Capital Impact Global Expert Network. For more resources, we have the information regarding the company that are certified. Hopefully, we'll have more information in times to come. We will also going to upload the webinar, I think, in next 2 days. So feel free to get in touch. We also have a page on the LinkedIn. And with this, if you don't have any further questions or comments, we will be closing this sessions. Or Helga, would you like to have any final remarks? Over to you.
I do have a very quick comment. I want to thank you, Zahid. This has been wonderful. Great experience. A lot of time went into that in getting this thing organized. But I also want to thank all of you participants who spent all the time with us. 2 hours in a webinar is a lot of work, a lot of attention. This was fantastic. And certainly to all of my partners, I see them now on the screen. It's very touching and very, very impressive what has happened today. And the good thing is it's being taped. And the good thing is for all participants, you can reach out to any one of us in the Human Capital Impact Network and beyond of that for individual conversations that you might have taken notes about. So, Zahid, thank you to you and your team.
Pleasure and happy to connect and serve the group. Thank you, everyone, for connecting from the different parts of the world in the different time zone, and hoping to have more such dialogue in the future, because this is a process and we'd like to, we are open to learn from each other. Thank you once again. All the best. Take care of yourself. Bye. Thanks, Helga.